Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome back, Kate.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh.
I'm a badass. You're a badass. Our badass people are coming.
They are. And here's one already. Carmen, she said good morning to two beauties. That is so sweet. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Carmen.
And so Kate, I missed you last week. And I know this week you've been recovering, and we'll talk more about this on our upcoming episode of Shooting the Shit, which will also be joined by Carrie, hopefully. I know Carrie is working to get a camera to be able to join us. But I know you'll be talking more about sort of what you went through and some of that experience. So people need to check back with us on that.
Yeah, totally. It'll be fun. I mean, I always think of things in kind of a humorous perspective as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
And Myra's joining us. She said, "Hey, ladies, good morning. Good morning, badass." Morning. And Eric, good badass morning.
Good badass morning, Eric.
Oh,
Thank
man.
you for being here.
Yeah.
So last week, you first of all, you were so vulnerable and real. Like I came on and I was like, oh my God, this is intense. And I was all drugged. And I was like, I gotta get off here and come back when I can focus.
Oh my gosh. You were on the drugs. Who knows what you could have said?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
But it was when I did return. I mean, what a deeply moving episode. I mean, it was just amazing. She was such a great. She was just had a wonderful story, and the way that you two were able to connect was just, I thought, really beautiful. So it was a great one. I mean.
Oh, thank you.
It was a great one for me to be gone and for you to do it. And it was just fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. So if people didn't see last week's episode, be sure to go back and check out Julie Ross Powers. And so it was just a very intimate type of interview. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to get so emotional at the beginning. I was like, oh wow, where are all these feelings coming from? But you have to sort of honor them and just let them flow.
Right.
But she was just great. And I know that a lot of people have been really touched. It's also been interesting because people connected from her, from other people that she was connected to.
Right.
And it's also brought about some other opportunities for us. So we are now connecting with people that are people that are connected through Julie that we are also looking at in future episodes.
Yeah. I know the one that we did speak with, I bought that book and I'm excited to read it. You know, like there's some cool things in the works here. And Sarah and I try to do as much as we can to really vet out great guests when we're going to have guests. You know, we want it to be as valuable and as emotional and raw as it can be, because that's why we're here. You know, we're here because we're badasses and we're not afraid to shy away from anything.
That's right. Bruce said, "Hey, badasses."
Hey, Bruce.
And then a Facebook user, I got on and looked, and it's Kim. So Kim said, "Good morning, badasses." I don't know why it's not showing your name, Kim.
That's good.
And Renee, missed you, Kate. Glad you're back. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Renee. It's good to see you too.
Yeah. And I also want to talk a little bit or let people know about some upcoming episodes that we have
Yeah.
planned. So we have coming up, the next one is going to be with Carrie Garrett. So she's going to be joining us to do Shooting the Shit. So she has been interested in doing live stream, and we tried to do it with her last time, but she wasn't quite ready, and hoping that she'll be good this time. But that should be a hoot. You haven't
Yeah,
really
she's a
met
riot.
Carrie, but per
Right.
se in person, so it'll be an interesting experience to just bring her on and let's just have a raw conversation.
Yeah, let's just go for it.
That's right.
Yeah, I love it.
And then we have some other ones. So some of the other ones I know we're going to be doing a wise mind. I know that was one
Mhm.
you were suggesting, Kate. And once you suggested it, I started looking into it and I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And so there's some
Yeah.
great concepts there with that one.
Yeah. Yep. I love the wise mind
Yeah.
stuff. And we're gonna do another one that's similar, like a black and white thinking.
Hmm.
Or is
The
that the same
Goldilocks zone. Hmm.
Goldilocks zone? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that one.
And then
We're
on
looking for oh, so good.
Oh,
I
I
was
was
gonna
also gonna say on Friday the 13th, we were also
Oh
gonna bring
yeah.
on my friend. She is a psychic medium from the UK. So Roxanne Furnival, she's gonna be joining us. So it's gonna be like 2:30 her time. So it'll be in the afternoon for her. But she's
Yeah.
also gonna do a psychic reading for the group. She said that sometimes she might pick up a particular energy. So if there's someone that's like really strong, I just actually met with her not too long ago, and she said that my dad had been with her all day, and he was just dancing around, like all excited for her to talk to me that day. And so we had an amazing conversation. I've connected with my dad twice through her. And I connected with my grandmother for the first time as well. So she made her presence known. So she connects with people on the other side. And then
Mhm.
she's also just an intuit and also uses tarot card and things like that. So
Yeah.
it will be an interesting episode.
Perfect for a Friday the 13th.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then Halloween, we are trying to figure
Yeah.
out what we want to do as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. We're looking for ideas. We have some thoughts, but we want to kind of have like a little bit of a Halloween party with y'all.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that we could get some ideas on what you
Mhm.
might be, what you might want to do, or might want to see.
Yeah.
We're pretty game. We're pretty flexible, but we just we want to kind of come up with the theme. I think costumes are definitely in order. I mean,
Definitely.
Halloween, right? So
Well, Kate and I like dressing up. I was in theater, so I love dressing up. So who
yes,
knows what we will be?
and I will do anything. I like.
I also would love to have pictures, like if people want to dress up and send us photos. But Kate and I have been
Yeah.
trying to figure out like what we want to do. And so some ideas we've thought about, well, should we do something fun like a trivia? And maybe it's a fun fact about Kate or Sarah. And you have to then figure out which of
Vote.
us has done this maybe silly or crazy thing. I don't
Right.
know. I've been trying to find someone. I already have Roxanne coming on for the 13th, but I was thinking about like a tarot card reader. I haven't necessarily found anybody, but we were just trying to think of something fun that we can do.
Mhm.
So if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear your creative ideas as well.
Yes. Keep them coming in if you guys don't mind, because
Yeah.
like you really help fuel kind of our creativity around some of these things.
Yeah.
Morning,
Thomas.
Thomas.
Yeah. Morning from ATL. And
Yeah.
so today we're going to be talking about feminine and masculine energy. And maybe,
Yes.
Kate, we can talk a little bit about the conversations that most people think feminine and masculine energy actually is, but it really isn't.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people, especially like in most recent times, with gender identities, a lot of people like associate this with sexuality or, and I think that there is some components, obviously, but what we're really talking about is your energy and the way you think and act and respond to things. So there's masculine traits and there's feminine traits, and they really don't have to do with body parts.
Exactly.
In any way. But I do think that there are, it's more likely that that women, I think, will carry a feminine trait, right? I mean, they're called feminine and masculine for a reason, because they do kind of align in nice silos like that. But you can, as a person, have very masculine traits and not be a man.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into all of what the traits are, but I think it's totally an interesting concept. And our good friend Tony Robbins, has published on this topic. And so you can do this little quiz in like maybe 5 minutes. If you actually read everything all the way through, it'll take you 5 minutes max.
Yep.
So take this quiz.
Yeah. And so here's the link. I've added it here. I had gone ahead and sent it to a few people that I knew were going to be joining today. And if you have taken the quiz, let us know what you are. And so, Kate, I have to say that a lot of times also people think that feminine energy and masculine energy, that they're very much geared towards sex. Well, feminine, females are feminine energy and males are masculine energy. And today, I think the biggest takeaway that I want people to understand is it's really the flow between the two, and that we all have masculine and feminine energy. And we'll also be talking about the wounded, or when you are in imbalance with one or the other, how it is that it may show for you. But for me, when I took this test, I thought that for sure I'm going to be masculine energy, because I felt like my leading masculine energy was male. And you and I were actually very surprised that we were not masculine energy. We were feminine energy.
We both came up on this quiz as feminine energy, which was a little shocking, honestly, because I seem to resonate a little bit more with the masculine stuff in general. But then once we kind of dug into it and we're looking at the traits and the things that we're going to kind of show you today, it did make some sense. So
it really did. My husband took it. He was also feminine energy. That was his leading energy.
Right.
And it was an interesting conversation also, I have to share with you. I was talking with my husband. I was like, so when you think about masculine, what do you think of? And he was like, I think about camouflage. I think about someone shooting a deer, and like all of these types of things.
Manly things.
Manly things. I was like, okay. And then I was like, what do you think when you think about the word feminine? He's like, lace, satin. And I just,
are those things that you like, Jay?
I know. It's so, I said to him, and I said, well, all the things you just said about masculine are not even close to anything related to you. And he was like, I got some camouflage gloves. So it was just a funny conversation with him. But we started talking a little bit about it's the energy. So it's the masculine energy, it's the feminine energy, and it's really not focusing on any of those types of things. It's not really about lace or satin, or about camouflage per se. And so Bruce here said that when he took it, I was not surprised. My energy was on the feminine side. And so, so Bruce, it's interesting. And as we start to dive into it today, Kate and I realized, we were like, oh yeah, that does make sense as we started
Mm-hmm.
to look at it. Let's see what Thomas said.
Yeah. These traits are also embedded in our languages. For instance, Spanish, el hombre or una
Mhm.
mujer.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. They are completely embedded. A lot of the Latin languages,
Mhm.
have very feminine and masculine kind of trees, so they go off into, so once you get to the core of a word,
Mm.
then the end of the word can change based on whether you're referring to a female or a male.
Yep.
So let me try to think of one.
While
Like,
you while
yeah,
you're
I'll
doing
try
that,
to
I'm
think of
gonna
one. Yeah.
make notice. So we have two more people. So
Good
Karen,
morning.
good morning, and so we're looking to forward to chatting with her in the future as well. And then Brooke has joined us as well. So thank you, Brooke.
Good morning. Good
Were you
morning,
able to think
all.
about any of those instances, Kate?
No,
Okay.
I mean, so like you can, but you in some of the words in Spanish, you think of the word and then you just change the word, the preposition that comes before it. So you would say
Gotcha.
el hombre, or you would say, la, but you
Hmm.
wouldn't say hombre, but you
Right,
would,
right.
so you just change basically. But
Yeah.
and that's true in Portuguese, Italian, French,
French.
all of the languages, the
Yeah.
Latin based languages.
Yeah. So let's jump in. I'm going to share up. I've created a couple of slides to help us from a visual perspective. And
Yes.
so feminine and masculine, keep in mind we're talking about energy traits. And so as we start to look at feminine and masculine, really feminine is about being and masculine
Mhm.
is about doing. And it's interesting, it's really related to, as you start to look at the yin and the yang, it's really that complementary aspect of the yin and the yang, the moon and the sun, the dark and the light, and the water and the fire. So it's really those opposites.
Yeah. And, one might just take a look at this and feel that the darkness maybe belongs on the masculine side and the lightness belongs on the feminine, because when you look at the aesthetics of it and the coloring,
Mhm.
there's more white on the feminine side and there's more black on the masculine. But what really is shining through is the other option, right? So
Mhm.
I found that to be a little interesting, and something I wanted to point out to folks is that the
Yeah.
dark and the moon, that's actually on the feminine side, where the
Mhm.
sun and the light is on the masculine side.
Yeah, and when you really think about dark, it's really also internal energy. Whereas,
Introspective, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's the light is the external energy. So you see, so it's interesting because when you really start to dive into this a little bit more, the external is how people may see you or how it is that you present yourself. But really, when you start to look at the feminine, it's going deeper and it's going into that internal, the emotions. And then also, what's interesting is which side of the human body
Hmm.
versus the brain. And so, feminine being the left side, and the right side, which is also intuition. And then the right side of the human brain for masculine, and the left side, which is really logical. And so we've talked about previously how the intuition is really going into the heart center. But most
Hmm.
people, all of these years, have been focused on the masculine. It's the logic, it's the mind,
Yeah.
it's how it is we think we just need to do. We just need to be active. We need to be strategic. We need to achieve all of those types of things. When you really think about society, we focus on the masculine side of this chart versus
Hmm.
much of the left hand side.
Right, right. Which is, yeah. So it kind of puts new, I don't know, meaning around the phrase, it's a man's world,
It
right?
does.
Yeah. What I found so interesting is that it kind of switches. So the right side of your body, but the left brain, and the
Mhm.
left side of your body and the right brain are together. And then when you look at these words that are connected, these traits, um, you know, receiving versus giving, they're like they have they put so much more depth to the entire energy thing that you're thinking about here. So
Yeah.
and being vulnerable on the feminine side and collaborative, that's all of those things really ring true for those that I think sit in the feminine world.
Mhm.
I thought myself might be more in the masculine world because of my ability to assert,
Mhm.
because of my strategic thinking, being very goal driven. But when I sit down and actually look at them and stack them up, as if as if I'm making a pros and cons, you know, there is more of me on the feminine than I thought.
Mhm.
Um, so
I agree, I was the same. Another thing I wanna point out is the connecting and the solving, and I didn't really
yes.
make a connection until this moment, but I'm a part of a
Oh.
a group called Emotional Jumpers or bungee jumping, and so Jesse, who we had on the call, and Jen, who we haven't had, on the call, they run a group called Emotional Bungee Jumping, and I participate in that. I think I am even participating this evening or this afternoon if I look at my calendar. But a part of what they are teaching is they call it solutions shanking. And so a part of that is,
Shanking.
yeah, shanking. And so a lot of times when we're talking with people, we are trying to solutionize what it is that their challenges are, their problems are, which I noticed is a masculine trait. So trying to
Mm.
solve their problem, solving is masculine, where they're actually teaching not connecting to the problem, connecting with the human. So as you're talking to the person, you go through this process of asking open-ended questions that are not leading, they're not yes and no type questions, but you're really connecting, which is the feminine side of the house of connecting
Mm.
with someone, and you are trying to lead them to solving their own problems. So I found I just connected in looking at both of these words in what it is we're doing is actually focusing on the feminine side of the house.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much more sense, right? When
Mhm.
you think about like what it is to connect versus what it is to solve.
Yep.
Um, and there's places and times for both of those. And so that kind of leads us down into the rest of today's discussion. But you
Yep.
know, what what's it all kind of needs to start with is an awareness of these different traits
Mhm.
and addressing some assumptions you've made about yourself, right? Like Sarah and I went into this process thinking, let's just have our assumptions go in, take some quizzes, figure out where we are, and then dig in. Because we had pretty decent understandings of these traits,
Mhm.
um, but to be able to have awareness to like where what are you leading with, what is your natural inclination, and then what can you do at times to balance it with some of the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part that I would state is that the feminine is really about creating. So when you
Yeah.
think about that, and I, I don't know if it's a poem, but at the end we're going to be reading a poem. But the creating, when you think about birth and you think about life, women are about creating. And so when people tap into their feminine energy, that is when they can really find creativity in
Yeah.
what it is that they're doing. The other thing that I would also point out is I was talking with my husband, and I told him that nurturing is on the feminine side. He's like, "Well, I'm not a very good nurturer." And I said, "That's not true." I said, "You may not necessarily nurture the way that someone may want, or in a particular way that people tend to think about nurturing, like when you're sick and taking care of someone, but you actually are very nurturing. So you'll bring me a meal, like you'll take care of me by making sure that I'm getting a meal when you know that I'm too full in my schedule to be able to actually take care of me. And I said, that is actually nurturing. He's like,
Right.
well, he goes, then I'm a nurturing bitch, because he he takes care of people. Like when my dad was passing away, that was his way of nurturing. He was
He
like,
made
all
the
right,
food.
I
Yep.
made the food. And he just, that's what he did. He went to this corner and just made sure he was taking care of people, because that's ultimately his way of nurturing.
Yeah. 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 I love that. We all have our preconceived notions about what these words mean, or what, and that's a part of why, like, having the awareness or discussing it with people that know you, like what you and
Yeah.
Jay are doing, or, you know, I think that's important.
Yep.
And I love the conscientious part of the masculine,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
achieving, that's why I think I'm like, maybe I'm just really attracted to the masculine in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
in terms of, it feels so, it feels successful. That's how we've defined success
Yeah.
in society, right? We've defined success as somebody who can project and be goal driven and be strategic. So maybe that's why you and I, like, thought we were there, right?
Exactly.
Right?
We're focused on achieving, goal driven,
Yes.
confident. When you think about some of these words, assertion, all of those types of things. But I feel like as I have continued to mature or get older, I'm connecting, I think, more to that
Yes.
feminine energy. So maybe if I took this test earlier on, like whenever I was 20, I might have been masculine, more leading masculine energy versus
Right.
now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to dive into the next area?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
All right.
So, this is these are the energy traits, but these are when you're feeling an imbalance, or so when you look at these traits, that could be a clue that you are imbalanced. So if you're feeling, depressed, or confrontational, you can find yourself squarely in, one of these energy traits, and you can use the knowledge that you're possibly in an imbalanced place to, make a decision on how to kind of change it.
Yeah. The one that stood out to me was anxiety, that it is an imbalance of the masculine side.
Yeah. Well, that
And I
reminds me
think,
of Thomas LeMay.
yeah, who's on
Right.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
so it really
his
has to do
talk
with
with
like
us.
fear. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think there's the anxiety, and the unstable aspects of an imbalance on the masculine side. I mean, that I feel, um, is pretty prevalent in
Mhm.
today's world, um, because and I think a lot of it has to do with, um, some fear around having those emotions to begin with, right?
Mhm.
So it's when you think about it, how hard is it to have anxiety about having anxiety,
Mhm.
right?
Right. And when you look at some of them, like some of them were very apparent, like aggressive, abuse of power, forcing, dominating, controlling, like all of those really made sense to me. But as I started to look at some of them, I was like, oh, unstable, rigid. Okay, that makes sense. Anxiety, micromanaging. But when you think about those the reason that I think that they're in imbalance really has to also go back to fear, like fear of not being in control, fear of judgment, fear of not being able to be in power, feeling
Mhm.
unstable because you don't know how to strategize or how it is that you're going to move forward or achieve, those types of things. So whenever I really started to look at them, I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense on the
Mhm.
masculine side.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that I can kind of lean into some of this and think, okay, I'm having anxiety. So that's a masculine imbalance trait.
Hmm.
And I had kind of always assumed that anxiety came from, obviously I knew it came from fear, but sometimes I assume it comes from like an oversensitivity, right?
Mm,
But if we look at this, those are two separate in two separate worlds, so
yeah.
anxiety has to come with trying to control the outcome, right?
Hmm.
Versus being oversensitive.
Exactly. Where the oversensitive is the feminine. And so
Right.
that's an imbalance on the feminine energy side. And a lot of these really made sense to me as well. So feeling powerless, the neediness, over emotional, like those tend to be things that are associated to feminine energy as well. But
Mm-hmm.
manipulation, like you would
Yeah.
almost think that might actually be masculine, but in
Right. Because it's
actuality,
controlling. Yeah.
yeah. And so, but it's how the feminine energy tends to control or feel more, how can they deal with situations? Being
Yeah.
inconsistent, for example. So that's an important aspect of making sure that what you're doing, you're being consistent in the energy that you are putting out there.
Right. Right. The other thing this did is this kind of made me laugh a little bit because when I think of the LGBTQ community, right?
Mhm.
So there's all these stereotypes, but they are built in some amount of truth, like a lot of stereotypes are. But there's a stereotype about lesbians and that they become codependent very fast, and the whole
Mm.
U-Haul thing. Have you heard of that? Like, what does a lesbian bring to a second date? And it's a U-Haul because they're gonna move in together,
I
immediately.
gotcha.
Yeah, right. And that is a real thing. That is a real thing that I have watched, my friends and community do,
Mm.
and and so, but it is. I mean, there it is. It's codependency. It's right there in the feminine trait. So you put two women in a household together. There's going to be some codependency at times, and you have to be aware of that. And then on the male side, and my male gay friends, there's when they have conflict, in my opinion, there's so much rigidity that they don't even know what they're conflicting about. Sometimes they're just both very, very rigid in what they want. And
Hmm.
then, there's no meeting the eye, but most of the stereotypes on the gay male side aren't even worth mentioning right now anyway. But I can see this, like I can see the imbalance that comes with the non-heterosexual lifestyles, and I think that's a real thing.
Mm.
Um, just like if just like you and Jay are both leading feminine,
Mhm.
you could find yourselves like in a codependency because you're both leading feminine, right?
Mm.
Um, it's I think those things exist. I just think that they exist in heterosexual relationships too.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull up something that Thomas just posted. So let's take a look at
Yeah.
this. There's the word valor. So he's talking about on the previous. I've been writing and workshopping. The pure definition is encountering conflict with firmness. However, especially in the US, we hold the word sacred and assigned it to heroic acts, those awarded the Medal of Honor for physical acts of courage. But I think valor can be put on a spectrum, like calling out harassment or a mother staying awake with children. What do you think? So I actually looked this one up because I was like, okay, what does valor actually mean? And in some ways, it's really about bravery or courageousness in some ways. Those were some of the things that it talked about. But Kate, do you have any other thoughts? And I can go back to the previous one. So valor had to do
And it's
with,
there on the
yep.
active
So it was
masculine
like
side.
instead of compassion, it was valor. So sort of sticking up. So I can see what he's saying as far as like sticking up or taking care of a sick child, for example. But I would think that might be more compassion, the staying up with your child, versus the valor is sort of calling out the harassment. To me, that would be more valor. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think right. I think that a woman's mother staying awake with her sick child um, is less heroic feeling. But when I look at what Thomas is saying, the exact definition, encountering conflict with firmness,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know that doesn't. I don't feel like that's how we define valor in this country.
Right.
We define valor purely as courageousness and being brave in the face of danger.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see that word used in other ways,
Mm-hmm.
especially like calling out harassment, like what you said, Thomas.
Yeah.
So I think you're definitely onto something there. Um,
I
and
do
I
too.
did find it interesting that it was the opposite of compassion, though, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still viewed very much as positive traits, right? Like
Yep.
be compassionate is a wonderful thing, and I
Mm-hmm.
think to be to be acting in a way that is considered to be a valor is also like nobody really thinks of that in a negative way.
Yeah. So I'm curious what anybody else thinks about that as well.
Yeah, chime in, people.
Yeah. All right, so we have one other slide. So this is the energy trait. This is specifically for feminine. So it's what is it when you are considered an awakened feminine energy versus a wounded feminine energy. And then we'll also go to masculine as well. So the awaken is that you are really honoring your truth with love. And you'll notice that you'll see the word love twice. So it's embodying love. But it's also, Kate, a lot of what we're trying to do with our show, which has to do with inspiring others to shine and helping
Yeah.
others, helping to find them and shine. And then I loved the setting healthy boundaries, that's actually feminine.
Yes. And it's when you are in your feminine glory. It's not just a feminine trait. It's when you are awoke, feminine versus a wounded feminine. So I love that too, because sometimes I love setting boundaries, and I love it when people are able to do that for themselves, but you often think of it kind of in a conflicting way, right? Like, or not a conflicting way, but in a negative tone, like, oh, this person is doing this and I need to set a boundary, and yeah, I guess I would always think just doing the boundary, setting the boundary itself in and of itself is strong. But, usually when the person is feeling as though they need to set a boundary, they aren't feeling strong. They're feeling like protective and frustrated that somebody else is trying to push that. I would love for people to feel awoke, like I'm doing this because I am nourishing myself. I'm nurturing who I am. I'm honoring myself with love.
Yeah. Well, whenever I think about boundaries, I think of it as I deserve
Yes.
to treat myself with respect or to honor my well-being within
Right.
myself. And if you see, it's like gentle with self and knows you are enough. But it's also about being able to, whenever I think about setting healthy boundaries, it is done in love. But it's also about you, and it's about making sure that you know what you need to be successful, to be your best. And so it's determining, okay, this is for my best and highest good. And it might be cutting off someone and saying, you know what, I don't need these ups and downs in my life, or whatever it might be, but it's choosing this. I'm doing this for my well-being because I don't want this constant negativity within my life.
Yeah.
But I love the also knowing that you are enough as well. Because if
Yeah.
you look at the other side on the wounded, shame self for not being enough.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at those wounded. I mean, how often do we sit sometimes in these places?
Hmm.
And that's what today is about, is some awareness around, if you find yourself in these places often,
Yeah.
know that you are wounded, that there is something there that you can address, outside of, these feelings, that you can actually work on it and do something to try to get yourself over to the other side. So being afraid to speak your truth and feeling unworthy, seeing others as a threat, not having boundaries, repressing your own, feminine energy, being guarded,
Yep.
and then, shaming yourself for not being enough. These are, these are things that I think those with the strongest feminine powers or traits, will find themselves in at times. And it's really important to be aware of it and to pull yourself out.
Yeah, the seeing others as threat I thought was an interesting one because it really had to do with sort of jealousy. So jealousy in itself is a wounded feminine, like because you feel like you are not enough. And
Right.
so someone else you're seeing, for example, your mate is flirting with someone else and you think, "Oh, this person, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of love that this person is now flirting with someone else," instead of, feeling confident within yourself or feeling that you are enough, that you know that for you, if you have a good relationship and you're solid in your feminine energy, you don't worry about getting jealous about
Right.
about your partner, flirting or things like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think seeing others as a threat, comes up too just like what you said, when you're not feeling good about yourself,
Mhm.
um, or when you are lacking self-love,
Mhm.
then when people are coming toward you with something that they are doing for you, you can see it as an attack,
Right.
like, oh, they're doing this because I suck, you
Exactly.
know
It also doesn't have to be your personal relationship, it could be in your work,
right.
so you are jealous of someone else because they're getting all of the attention, or at least that's the way it seems. I never get attention. Nobody ever notices me,
Right.
that type of thing.
Right. Yep. I had found I can find myself there sometimes. And I
Mm.
especially have in the past when I've been depressed,
Mhm.
when I'm struggling with depression. um, that's why it's so connected to my self-worth, right? So when I'm
Yeah.
struggling with depression, then, the things that Jenna may be doing, I will see as like, oh, she's clearly attacking me. you know um, Luckily I'm on the other side of all that, so I can kind of see that now and see the pattern, and that's
Yeah.
so helpful. It's not that you're going to stop this shit. Like, in my opinion, you still have, a lot of the fears and things that happen, and just humanity. I mean,
Mhm.
our lives are filled with this stuff, but it's really around the awareness and how to kind of shift yourself and be proactive around these emotions and thoughts and feelings rather than being reactive.
Yeah. And so I'll also be interested in others that have taken the quiz, and you can do it after the
Yeah.
fact, so you can stay present in the moment. But I'll be curious if you would post afterwards. What did you find your leading energy to be? And so, Kate,
I'm
let's skip over
yeah.
to the male side. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I was going to say, skip over to the male side. I'm really interested. I know that Bruce shared that he is feminine, that he has the feminine energy, and was not
Hmm.
surprised by that. But, I'd love to see what, Kim, I'm assuming you're very much in the feminine, but I would love to see what yours is, Myra, um,
Mhm.
you know, um, and Carmen, Myra works in a isn't it Myra that
Carmen.
works in a very, or Carmen that works in a very like masculine, she works in the AEC industry, right?
Yeah, she's in construction, so she works with mostly men. And so
Yeah. Would love to see what your traits are, guys. And Renee, all of you that have joined it. Oh, and Eric, I would love to know.
mhm. Yeah. So I'm wondering, I'm almost predicting because people that join this show might be more in touch with being vulnerable, for example, especially those that speak up. That
Right.
is vulnerable because we are a vulnerable show. I almost get a feeling that a lot of people might be leading feminine now.
Right. Because they're
So
attracted to this.
exactly. So it'll
Right.
be interesting. And so Kim said, laugh out loud, I am feminine. And so her leading
Yes.
so you took the test and you're leading feminine you're the leading feminine energy.
Yeah. Not surprised. You
Yeah,
are yeah. That's why we hired her at Full Sail, right? Because
that's
she's a
right.
nurturer.
There's nurturer. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
So
awakened masculine.
I love this. Like this, I love this, leading with integrity, being non-judgmental and
Mm,
present and grounded, integrated with your heart and your emotions.
yeah.
That's so cool. Being consistent, holding space, purpose driven, and supporting of the feminine energy. Like I love the the awoke masculine traits.
Hmm.
I just think they're so cool.
Yeah, I love the non-judgmental, especially
Yes.
because that is where I think a lot of times we're really dealing with a lot of the wounded masculine in our society is that there's just so much judging. Like when you think about all kinds of things, like I'm one political thing, someone else is another political thing. I believe one thing for a religion, someone else believes something else. Like we don't hold space or allow for people just to be different and to have different perspectives. And so when we're doing that, we're critical, we're judgmental. It's the wounded masculine. Like you haven't been taught to just have space for
Right.
other people and other concepts.
Right. Yeah. And how right and how powerful. Sorry, my mic keeps dropping. So I was touching it, and it was a so I I'll just keep going and stay
Okay.
away from it. Okay, so on the the wounded side of the masculine, forceful, controlling, critical, judgmental, all of these things, um, those are like the hardest things to deal with, right? Like
Mhm.
the masculine really like it's kind of overshadows the femininity in a way because when
Mhm.
you look at these things, I mean, it is so in your face.
Yeah,
The contrast is so distinct.
it really is. Ego driven. That one also very much stands out to me because we a lot of times get caught up in our ego in what it is that being it goes back to the holding space for people and it's allowing other ideas or other thoughts. And sometimes we get so focused on our ego, on what it is that must happen. This is the way it has to go. And so
Right.
our ego gets in the way of us sort of sitting back and allowing more space for what the possibilities might actually be.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are fantastic points, Sarah. The other thing when I was looking at this and doing research prior, and I was kind of thinking about different things in my life or those around me. And it also kind of put some context in me for like, for when you think about kind of the hardest parts of society, like, men that have raped,
Mm,
or pedophiles, like it, when I look at this list and I think about how wounded they were,
right.
it puts some context around this, right? So,
Hmm.
an adult who forces himself on a woman, obviously very ego driven and dominating and repressive, and but and but when you think about it, they're numb.
Right.
They're judging, they're critical, they're like, that's coming from a real place of sadness and
It is.
negativity, so
Absolutely. That's one of the things I've always felt, having gone through that, having been molested. I think about the wounded aspects that someone has to be in order to do those types of things. And when you think about even sexual assault and things like that, and you look at that, they talk about it really has nothing to do with the sexual act. It's more about being forceful and controlling. And so when you look at that, like, what is it that happened to that person in their lives as they were growing up that someone wounded them and made them, or helped sort of not make them, but helped spawn this wounded feeling within them that made them feel like this is the path that they needed to go, that they haven't actually come into acceptance of feeling allowed, to have
yeah,
their emotions, or,
right,
really also the supporting, feminine energy, because that's a lot of it as well, is that, the negative feelings about the feminine, as
yeah.
well.
Can we go back to the last slide?
To the
Because
feminine
on
one?
the yeah, for a second, because I'm wondering,
Mhm.
um, to me, one of the we can always look at like, you can say, okay, what are the worst things that men do? Okay, men can rape people or kill people, and females do that too,
Mhm.
but less. But I think one of the worst things that happens in the feminine place, or that women can do, is there's a lot of women that end up screwing up their kids, right? That end up being a bad mom, not on purpose, but they
Right.
but and this can help you, get an understanding of why. So if you can, how are you to nourish or nurture another person when you're afraid to speak your truth, when you are
Mm.
feeling so unworthy of love, and you can't set boundaries, and you're so guarded, and you're always afraid you're not enough? How how in the world can somebody who has those feelings be able to parent, right? In a really successful way? They're set up to fail.
Yeah. And I do want to emphasize, it's not because we've all done things that we are continuing to learn. So I do
Oh,
want to be
right.
careful about the word, a bad parent.
Right.
It's a learning parent, because we're all
Right.
learning. And so, but it's these types of things that I think are important to understand, the wounds that you feel related to feminine or masculine energy. How is that then impacting the people that you surround yourself with, especially like your children, or even your coworkers, in
Right.
some instances. So whenever you have it come into feeling how it is you're going to deal with that past pain or trauma, that also can impact other people, as well.
Yeah. 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 So I think it's a valid thing to think about, and to put in front of yourself, especially as you are either dealing with things that you have been through,
Hmm.
or you're trying to navigate relationships with people that have harmed you. So you can use this framework of the masculine and feminine for both, to kind of put some context and understanding around traumas, and then to your everyday life as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Kate, what I would like to do is sort of start to wrap up with the poem. And then I'd
yes.
love to hear, in the meantime, any thoughts you guys have. Was there something that was sort of surprising to you? Was there anything that sort of resonated with you for your own self related to the feminine and masculine energy? And then Kate and I are going to sort of wrap up, at the end. But what I ended up doing, I was inspired. This has been about a month ago, that I ended up writing something. And so Kate and I are continuing to expand on beyond the music and doing other things that are creative, so art or writing a poem or writings. So today I had written something that we wanted to share with you. So I'm going to share it up and then read the information. So this is something that I had written. It was specifically about the feminine. The feminine is dark. The feminine is the moon opposed to the sun. The feminine is intuition. The feminine is emotional. The feminine is receptive. The feminine is body and our relationship with our body. The feminine are the shadows that lie hidden beneath. Think about when a baby is growing inside. It is dark. You can hear, but no sight. Complete darkness that requires us to feel. Darkness doesn't have to be scary. Darkness is when you open up other senses and stop relying on what you see. The feminine is what makes us go inward. We need to run to it, not away from it. The feminine is seeking out our emotions that we haven't dealt with. The feminine is seeking out the dark within us that will allow us to grow, expand, and create. The feminine is infinite. It has huge potential, which is why we can also fear it. This is why the masculinity fears feminine energy. It is afraid of what it might reveal. It fears the shadows or emotions might be exposed. There is beauty in being able to flow between feminine and masculine energy.
I love it. And you wrote this before you took the test.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just liked it. It was something that I just came to me one morning. I've been dealing with or working with the depth psychologist that we had on. And a part of what she has asked me to do is to document my dreams and then also to do any journaling. So this was something that came out of me one day.
Just woke up and this was what popped into your journal.
Yep. This is what I just started writing. So,
and I really appreciate you sharing it with us, Sarah. Like, you just the fact that you are willing to share a poem that you wrote is so badass. But you know, like when you put it in the context of like, these are my private journal musings,
yeah.
You know, I love it. Fuck yeah.
And so I did think it was interesting that I wrote about the feminine because as we talked about, I relate, but it's been sort of a journey for me. And I think that's why it came out of me, because it was figuring out, oh, there continue to be things within me, the dark, the figuring out the emotional aspects within myself. And that's really where a lot of times people are scared, like they're scared to dive in and find those potential wounds or the things that are within them. And so I was really connecting with the feminine that morning.
Yeah. 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 I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, well, I hope today was helpful for everyone. It gave you a little bit more ideas or perspective on masculine, feminine energy. So let us know what you thought. Was it a little thought provoking or was it something you already knew maybe? So we're curious to hear back from you. So whether you post that here or you let us know personally, we would love to just hear from you.
Yep. Please engage as much as you feel comfortable. We love that. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Hope this conversation fuels your Friday. So you have a badass, kick-ass Friday and a great weekend, and go into next week ready to rock it.
And be sure to join us next week as we will be doing Shooting the Shit with Carrie Garrett's.
Yeah. So we'll be just telling you all of our stories since the last time we shot the shit.
That's right. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Thank you, Kate. So
Love
good to have you back.
Oh, it's good to be back. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.